Sophie Cunningham says she's pissed when people say Caitlin Clark isn't the face of the league, and she drops a couple F-bombs, a couple four-letter words.
Now, Sophie Cunningham joins the list of WNBA players with a podcast or an outlet like that.
The WNBA just got slapped with the hardest reality check in its history. And no, it didn't come from a journalist or an outsider. It came from one of their own, Sophie Cunningham. In the very first episode of her podcast, Sophie dropped a statement so blunt, so unapologetically savage, it's still echoing through locker rooms across the league. When asked about people denying Caitlin Clark's impact, she didn't sugarcoat a thing. Her response? You're dumb as F. Just 3 words, but they detonated like a grenade inside a league already teetering between progress and self-destruction. Fans ran with it. Clips went viral. Even the harshest critics of Clark were suddenly on the defensive. And just like that, Sophie didn't just enter the conversation. She hijacked it. But what made her say it? And why now? Because she's tired of the games. And she's not the only one. Next up, we look at who Sophie really is, and why she's not the type to hold back. Before she became the WNBA's truth teller, Sophie Cunningham was already built different. She wasn't just another athlete with opinions, she was a fighter long before she stepped on a pro court. At just 6 years old, Sophie earned a black belt in Taekwondo. Think about that. Most kids at that age are learning how to spell their last name. Sophie was already learning how to drop people. And it didn't stop there. In high school, she didn't just watch football from the sidelines, she played. She scored points. She kicked 2 extra points and handled kickoffs, becoming the first girl in her school's history to put points on the board. That's not cute or quirky. That's unheard of. This wasn't someone who stumbled into professional basketball by accident. Sophie Cunningham has been fighting her whole life for respect, for recognition, and now for the future of women's basketball. So when she speaks, especially with the kind of fire she showed on her podcast, it's not just noise. It's a warning shot. And if players thought she was bluffing, they're about to find out exactly how serious she is. Because what she exposed next wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. From the moment Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, she had a target on her back, and not the kind that comes with fame. It was a different kind. Personal, petty, and dangerous. She wasn't just a rookie. She was a phenomenon. The player every media outlet was talking about. The one drawing millions of viewers to a league that had been ignored for decades. And instead of embracing her, many players wanted to break her. Sophie Cunningham saw it firsthand. On her podcast, she revealed that entire locker rooms were scheming, not to beat Clark, but to teach her a lesson. Her former team, the Phoenix Mercury, had actual talks about roughing Clark up, saying things like, "We're going to show her what the W really is." Let that sink in. A league desperate for attention was plotting to punish the one person giving it to them. It wasn't just aggressive play, it was a campaign. Game after game, Clark took elbows, cheap fouls, shoves to the floor, and the league stayed quiet. No protection, no accountability, just silence. And through it all, Caitlin kept showing up, hitting shots, selling tickets, drawing headlines. She kept building the league, even as the league tried to knock her down. That's when Sophie made her move. Not for publicity, not for clout, but because she saw the bigger picture and refused to let it burn. What happened next would turn both of their careers upside down. It was June 17th, 2025. A regular season game between Indiana and Connecticut, at least on paper. But for Caitlin Clark, it became something else entirely. She took a poke to the eye mid-play, just another rough hit in a season full of them. And as usual, her teammates stood still. No one stepped in. No one stood up. Except this time, Sophie Cunningham did. In that moment, everything shifted. Sophie didn't hesitate. She retaliated hard, sending a message the entire league heard loud and clear. Clark's not alone anymore. The media called it a brawl. Fans called it justice. Because for the first time all season, someone physically stood between Clark and the growing storm around her. And the impact? Immediate. Viral clips. Explosive headlines. Social media flooded with support. not just for Sophie's move, but for what it represented. Caitlin Clark had finally been backed up, and that changed the energy. What had been months of targeted hits and subtle jabs turned into something else, a reckoning. That one act of protection didn't just launch Sophie's fame. It redefined Caitlin's role in the league. No longer just the rising star everyone wanted to take down. Now, she was the centerpiece of a movement. A player who had survived everything the league threw at her, and finally, had someone in her corner. And that corner? It was about to become the smartest place in the WNBA. After that moment on the court, everything changed, but not just for Sophie. Caitlin Clark's value skyrocketed. She wasn't just the league's leading scorer or a fan favorite. She became the most bankable athlete in women's basketball. And suddenly, everyone wanted in, but Sophie was already there. That single act of defense, throwing hands for Clark, turned Sophie from a mid-tier role player into one of the most talked-about names in the league. Her social media exploded. Over 1.2 million TikTok followers, nearly 1 million more on Instagram, and a 6-figure podcast deal with Colin Cowherd's network.
Why?
Because she aligned herself with the face of the WNBA before the rest of the league figured it out. Caitlin's games were pulling in 2.7 million viewers, the highest ratings in 25 years. Teams were literally relocating games to bigger arenas just to meet the demand when Clark came to town. She was changing the league's economy, and Sophie was monetizing her loyalty. Every photo together, every TikTok, every podcast mention was a message to brands. This is the duo you want to bet on. And while others were still fighting Clark on the court, Sophie was building her future around her. She didn't need to drop 30 points a night. She just had to see what everyone else was too proud to admit. Caitlin Clark isn't competition. She's the opportunity of a lifetime. You'd think that with Caitlin Clark pulling the WNBA out of obscurity, the league would protect her at all costs. But instead, they let her get punished. Game after game. Elbows. Shoves. Hard fouls. And the refs? Silent. The league? Nowhere to be found. The biggest star the league has ever had was being treated like a punching bag, while the WNBA stood back and watched. It wasn't just a failure. It was sabotage. And again, it was Sophie Cunningham who had the guts to say what everyone else wouldn't. She slammed the officiating, called out the hypocrisy. She even got fined $500 for a TikTok that joked about how little protection Caitlin was getting. But Sophie didn't back down, because she understood something no one else seemed to grasp. When your league is finally making money, you don't beat up the reason why. Sophie's message couldn't have been clearer. Just be nice. That's it. 2 words. Show some respect. Support the player who's filling the seats and rewriting your paychecks. But instead, many players chose to take cheap shots and chase clout, while Clark kept showing up and carrying the league on her back. And in the middle of it all, Sophie kept doing what no one else would, telling the truth and defending the one player who made the WNBA worth watching. Caitlin was never the problem. The problem was the league didn't know how to handle a star. To some, it started as strategy. Maybe Sophie saw the headlines, the opportunity, the attention.
But now?
It's clear, this isn't just branding anymore. It's real. The bond between Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham has become one of the most authentic and impactful relationships in the league. On and off the court, they're building something that feels rare in professional sports, a friendship that actually makes both players better. During All-Star Weekend, Caitlin was named captain, just her 2nd year in the league. While other players barely acknowledged it, Sophie posted a single word: Captain Fire. No bitterness. No ego. Just loud, public support. And it hasn't gone unnoticed. Brands are lining up, not just for Caitlin, but for the duo. Sophie recently signed a deal that literally markets her as Caitlin's protector. Not the star. Not the scorer. The one who keeps the star standing. It's a brilliant move, and it's working. Because fans aren't just watching Caitlin anymore. They're watching the chemistry, the loyalty, the story. Scroll through social media and you'll see it. The TikToks, the sideline jokes, the moments between games. It's not fake. It's not forced. It's connection. And in a league that's been fractured by ego and resentment, Clark and Cunningham are showing what teamwork actually looks like. And the wild part? That chemistry may be worth more than any stat line. While Caitlin Clark was out there rewriting the future of the WNBA, most players were too busy trying to humble her to realize what was really happening. This wasn't just a rookie with talent. This was a moment, a movement, a once-in-a-generation athlete who could drag the entire league into the spotlight if they let her. But they didn't. They fouled her, mouthed off, took cheap shots, tried to send a message. And in doing so, they missed the real play, the chance to grow with her, to ride the wave,
To evolve.
Sophie Cunningham? She didn't miss it. She saw it early. While others were trying to compete with Clark, Sophie connected with her. And that made all the difference. Just look at the contrast. Players like Angel Reese tried to make headlines by starting feuds, throwing shade, and grabbing the mic. And where did it get her? Injured, overshadowed, and clinging to a double-double streak like it's a life raft. Meanwhile, Sophie backed the biggest star in the game and turned it into a podcast deal, brand endorsements, millions of followers, and a permanent place in the spotlight. The crazy part? None of this required Sophie to score 30 points. It just required her to do what almost no one else did: see the opportunity and act on it. Clark wasn't the threat. She was the ticket. And while the league was busy trying to humble her, Sophie got smart and got paid. Caitlin Clark didn't just walk into the WNBA, she flipped the entire system on its head. She brought in the fans, the cameras, the dollars. She made people care. And the wildest part? The league still hasn't figured out how to handle it. Instead of protecting her, too many players tried to push her out. They saw her spotlight and took it as a threat, not a gift. And that's where Sophie Cunningham made the smartest move in women's basketball. She didn't just defend Caitlin on the court, she defended the future of the WNBA itself. Sophie saw that Clark wasn't the enemy, she was the engine, the one pulling everyone forward. And while the rest of the league was choosing bitterness, Sophie chose business. Loyalty, vision. Her reward? A full-blown career transformation. From role player to podcast host. From relative unknown to million-dollar brand. She didn't need to tear Caitlin down to rise. She just needed to stand beside her. And now, the question hangs heavy over the league. Will anyone else wake up? Will they keep elbowing the only star bringing them real money, or finally realize that Clark's success is everyone's success? Because the truth is brutal. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA. The WNBA needs her. Sophie got it early, and she cashed in. Everyone else, still playing catch-up, still swinging elbows while the real opportunity walks right past them. This is the moment. And if they don't start acting like it, Caitlin Clark might keep winning, but the league won't.